Hi students, welcome to session 5 of water and its importance. So students, in today's session we are going to discuss about the same topic, that is natural disaster. In the previous session we discussed about drought, and in today's session we are going to discuss about flood, which is also natural disaster. And we will also study about conservation of water. So let us now start with today's session and all about this natural disaster. Yes, flood. Students, just as too little rain is bad, too much rain is bad as well. Means when there is no rain, drought happens. But when there is more rain or much rain, then this condition happens, that is flood. So when too much rain is there, it is bad because it leads to water being everywhere. Sometimes the entire area gets submerged in water. So a flood happens when too much rain falls. This type of condition in which too much rain falls, in where there is water being everywhere because of it, or an entire area when it gets submerged in water, is called flood. So storms can cause floods. In a flood, water from rivers, they flow over the land, and flood water enters houses and other buildings too. So a flood is a great flowing or overflowing of water onto land that is not usually submerged. But a flood happens when too much rain brought by storms and strong winds falls and cannot be absorbed by the soil. And rivers burst their banks and the water spills out onto the land. Even the strong winds blowing across the sea make huge waves that surge onto the land and flood the coastal areas. So this condition is called flood. And there are various types of floods, like river floods, coastal floods, flash floods. But we will study about these types of floods in higher classes. We don't need to study right now. So basically, a flood is an overflow of water, an expanse of water submerging land. In the sense of flowing water means the word is applied to the inflow of the tide as opposed to the outflow. In many arid regions of the world, the soil has very poor water retention characteristics, or the amount of rainfall that exceeds the ground's ability to absorb water. So when a rainfall does occur, it can sometimes result in a sudden flood of water, filling dry stream beds known as flash flood. So many rivers that flow through relatively flat land border on broad flood plains. When heavy rainfall or melting snow causes the river's depth to increase and the river to overflow its banks, a vast expanse of shallow water can rapidly cover these flood plains, and the floods deposit silt on the flood plains, improving their fertility, which has throughout history attracted agriculture and other human development. So in order to preserve these farms and cities, some rivers prone to flooding have had extensive and elaborate systems of dikes constructed along their shores and surrounding nearby cities. But unfortunately, by restraining flood waters, these dikes can result in much greater flooding upstream and in locations where they break. The control of annual flooding by dikes and by dams also prevents the deposition of silt on the rich farmlands and can result in their eventual depletion. So basically, the annual cycle of flood and farming was of great significance to many early farming cultures, most famously to the ancient Egyptians of the Nile River. And so, this way, the flood was controlled at that time. But what happens and what are the main causes when flood happens? Let us see. Yes. During a flood, rivers overflow, water levels in the lakes increase, and the soil gets too soggy and waterlogged. So the main cause behind this flood is monsoon rainfalls that can cause disastrous flooding in some equatorial countries such as Bangladesh due to their extended periods of rainfall. Even hurricanes can cause flooding. That means hurricane when it hits the land, causing the surf to rise as high as 40 feet above the sea level, and it forms the large amounts of precipitation sometimes associated with other types of natural calamities. So under these events associated with heat waves, floods from quickly melting mountain snow has caused loss of property and life. So in prehistoric times or geological times, several great floods are known or suspected to have occurred with varying amounts of supporting evidence. And the flooding, like the flooding of the Black Sea, it caused by a rising level of the Mediterranean Sea. And there was great flood once in North America that caused by the breaking of ice dams. So all this happens. All these are main causes of floods. Even during floods, plants and crops die either due to water clogging or due to soil being washed away, robbing their roots of support. And here you can see one picture of the flood which happens in cities where almost all the things, all the objects, they, like cars and homes, they get submerged in water. So in such waterlogged conditions, many disease-causing germs also multiply and they cause waterborne diseases. Like sometimes waterborne diseases can even lead to an epidemic. Epidemic means where thousands of people are affected at the same time. That whole entire area is affected. And so a flood can thus lead to many other conditions like disease, starvation, and even loss of life and property. So basically a flood can also cause the same effect on the food chain as a drought does. So both of these are natural disasters which are bad for the human life. So both droughts and floods are the natural disasters. They are unfortunate events which are brought about by nature and that can have a very strong effect on the lives of people. Even the economy of a country can crumble as a result of losing people, property, goods and many more things. But we can and we must try to reduce the bad effects of these disasters as much as possible. We must understand that such things can happen and so we must be prepared to face them as and when they happen. Now I would like to share one case study just as we shared in the previous session about drought. In this also we will share a case study, that is flood in Bihar. It was one of the most disastrous floods in the history of Bihar, an impoverished and densely populated state in India. A breach in the Kosi embankment near the Indo-Nepal border at Kusha in Nepal, which occurred on 18th of August 2008. So at that time the flood killed 250 people and forced nearly 3 million people from their homes in Bihar. And more than 300,000 houses were destroyed and at least 340,000 hectares, or rather in acres the figure is 840,000 acres of crops were damaged. The river changed course and in inundated areas which hadn't experienced floods in many decades, at that time flood affected over 2.3 million people in the northern part of Bihar. So on 18th August, heavy monsoon rains and poor maintenance caused a breach in Kosi embankment where water passed through the breach, inundating hundreds of villages in northern Bihar. And the flood submerged most of the Kosi alluvial fan area, which is very fertile with a dense agrarian population. So flooding occurred throughout the Kosi river valley in northern Bihar in the districts of So Supaul, Araria, Saharsa. Let me write it down for you. So basically, flooding didn't occur throughout the Kosi River, but also in the districts of Supaul, Araria, Madhepura, Bhagalpur, Saharsa, Purnia, and West Champaran. Even the southeast Terai ecoregion of Nepal was also affected. And the villagers in Bihar, what did they eat after this incident happened? Yes, villagers in Bihar, they ate raw rice and flour mixed with polluted water, and so hunger and disease were widespread at that time. Even this Supaul district was the worst hit surging waters, which swamped 1,000 square kilometers of farmlands, destroying crops. So it was a very big tragedy, which caused widespread loss of life and property, affecting more than 2.5 million human lives, and this also led to cancellation of bus, train, air traffic, etc. And the flood submerged the fertile land, destroying wheat and paddy crops too. So that was the very, very worst scenario on 18th August 2008. Right, so that was all about natural disaster, flood. So we should be prepared for these natural disasters. We cannot help it out, but at least we can prepare ourselves, and we can try our best to prepare ourselves from these natural disasters and other calamities too. Alright, now let us discuss about one more interesting topic, and that is conservation of water. Now we studied about the introduction to water. We know that there are several uses of water. There are many uses of water, in fact, but we should also know that how we can conserve water. We now know how important water is for life to exist on Earth, and we also know that only a small percentage of water in the planet is usable, and that makes it very precious for us. Like our ancient religious texts and epics give a good insight into the water storage and conservation systems that prevailed in those days. And over the years, rising population, growing industrialization, and expanding agriculture have pushed up the demand for water. Like efforts have been made to collect water by building dams and reservoirs and digging wells. And some countries have also tried to recycle and desalinate, means to remove salt from the water. So water conservation has now become the need of the day. The idea of groundwater recharging by harvesting rainwater is gaining importance in many cities. And this is what we will discuss in next session, rainwater harvesting. Even in the forests, water seeps gently into the ground as vegetation breaks the fall. And this groundwater in turn feeds wells, lakes and rivers. Even protecting forests means protecting water catchments. And in ancient India, people believed that forests were the mothers of rivers and worshipped the sources of these water bodies. So water conservation is a big thing now, but every little bit helps. So don't think that what you do doesn't matter. A whole lot of people doing a little bit adds up to a whole lot. So we must all make changes in our lifestyles that will change the course of our water and its quality. So water conservation needs to be a way of life, not just something we think about once in a while, but if we all do our part in conserving water, we can make a huge difference for the environment. So one method of conservation of water is to avoid wastage, and this can begin at home, both indoors and outdoors. Like water saving can be done from an individual level to a national level, using our water wisely and caring for it properly. Since each of us depends on water for life, it is our responsibility to learn more about water conservation and how we can help keep our water pure and safe for generations to come. Since we all enjoy the benefits of having pure, clean water, we must help conserve water so that we may continue to enjoy these benefits. So water conservation is not a job that is just for the technician or soil scientists or forester or wildlife manager or plant scientist or city planner or park manager or farmer or mine owner alone. It is a job for the everyday person who just likes to have access to the life-sustaining resource of water. So we must all recognize that water conservation really is our personal responsibility and not just leave it up to other people. We all enjoy the many ways that we use water. So why not do our part in caring for our water? Our water supply is finite, which means that we do not know or we do not have an endless supply. We only have the water that we have now. 97% of all water on earth is salt water that we discussed a lot of times, which is not suitable for drinking. So only 3% of all the water is fresh water, and only 1% out of which 0.003% specifically is available for drinking water. So with all the people on earth relying on such a small percentage of the water on earth, it only makes sense that we must preserve and conserve our water. We must not pollute water because it is the only water we will ever have. Some people do not realize the importance of water and they are continually spoiling or polluting it. So only about 10% of wastewater is disposed of properly. So we must learn to save water now for the future. The quality of water is very important. And so there are some methods like building dams for storing the water or for conserving water. So let us now see that what is actually a dam. Yes, a dam is a structure built to hold back water in order to prevent flooding and to provide water for irrigation and storage too. And this is a beautiful picture of one such dam, which is located in any place for conserving water. So what it basically does, that built on rivers, the dam has high walls. It has high walls and it has many openings or gates to both let in and hold back water. So during the rains, when the rivers fill up, water enters the dam, and again when water is needed later, the gates are opened to let out water. This is how it works. So we have the same amount of water now as there was when the earth was created. So other than this, I would like to share that this is the water we have and we must preserve its quality, because water is the foundation of food and life. Next to air, water is our most precious resource. We cannot live without water. And so saving water helps to preserve our environment, and it reduces the energy which is required to process and deliver water, which helps in reducing pollution and conserving fuel resources too. So saving water now means having water available in the future for recreational purposes too. Right? So that was all about conservation of water. Remember that conserving the water we have minimizes the effects of water shortages and helps build up better defense against future drought years. If we save water now, we are helping to ensure a water supply adequate for future generations. Saving water saves money. We must save water today so that it will be available to us in the future. We need to think of future generations, people who will not have a sufficient supply of water unless we become more concerned with how we use our water today. Not our water, but basically water. So there are many things, like as we studied about dams, that we can do to help preserve water. There are not things that are hard. All it takes is a little bit of extra effort, and soon it will be second nature for us. So save the water, it's all we have got. Right? I hope you liked this session, and in next session we will study about one more important topic, that is on saving water. And we will also see such methods that how we can save water. So don't miss it. We'll meet in the next session. Till then, enjoy, have a nice time. Thank you.